The quality of your audio plays a big role in the growth of your podcast. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 25 tips for podcast audio recording and production. These are 25 easy things that you can do to help you to achieve a studio quality sound. Let's go. Number one, invest in a good mic. Starting out with a solid recording makes it much easier for you or your editor to get you the best out of your episodes, to get you the best result. And your microphone choice is the biggest driver of your recording quality. And it doesn't have to cost you the world either. A dynamic microphone like this Audio-Technica ATR 2100X will set you back around £80, $80. Or the Shure MV7 is a great option at around £200, £250 if you can stretch your budget a little bit further. These are going to catch you that high quality, intimate recording. And I'd stay away from condenser microphones like the Blue Yeti, for example, unless you're recording in a professional studio space. Number two, use a pop filter, also known as a windshield. This is a piece of material like this that you put in between your mouth and the microphone, or you can use one of these foam ball types. It stops the mic from picking up those nasty, windy p and b sounds, the kind of airy sounds, also called plosives, that a microphone will pick up. If your mic already has a thick foam cover built in, then you probably won't need an extra one. If it doesn't, or if it has one of these metal grills, then you probably will. These generally aren't enough, especially when you've got the mic close, which we'll talk about shortly, to block out those plosives. Number three, choose the right room. You want to be recording in a quiet room with minimal background noise. So, air conditioning, ideally not in a shared office space or anything like that. Even though those dynamic mics I mentioned will reduce the amount of background noise that you're picking up, you're still going to pick up some if there's a significant amount of noise going on. You can also aim to record in a room with soft furnishings like a bed, sofa, thick curtains, things like that, or you can invest in some acoustic panels like you see behind me. These help absorb the reverb or echo of the room and will give you a nicer, more intimate sound. And number four is proper mic placement. Now this one is commonly missed out. The end of your microphone should be pointing directly at your mouth with about 4 to 6 inches of space between your mouth and the microphone. Too far away and the room sound will be picked up more. Too close and it will start sounding a little bassy and you'll be more at risk of picking up those windy plosive sounds that we mentioned. If you're using a little desk stand that came with the mic, it might be a little bit difficult to get this placed right. If you are having trouble, then I'd recommend picking up one of those desk clamp boom arms so you can position it directly in front of your mouth. And also have a look at the manual for your microphone. Some microphones are side address, meaning that you're not going to be pointing the microphone directly at your mouth, so horizontally. It's going to be more of a vertical position. So check your manual, make sure that you are actually pointing the mic the right way. Number five, monitor your levels. So whichever software you're recording in, for example, Audacity, Reaper, Riverside, they'll have a meter that shows how loud the signal is when you're speaking. And if it's hovering around the red or it's pushing into that red zone quite often, then you want to be reducing the level. So the level when you're talking normally is hovering around the middle, and ideally it's peaking, as in when you're speaking the loudest or laughing, it's hitting the yellow or just before the end and not the top. Otherwise, it will cause a nasty distortion called clipping. So reduce that level either on your microphone itself if you have a volume knob, or your audio interface if it's plugged into an audio interface, or in your software itself. Plenty more tips to go, but if you do want to take this further and take away something from this video, something tangible, then if you click on the link below, you'll be able to download the podcast production process cheat sheet for free. It takes you through the full production process from recording, editing, mixing, and mastering to help you learn how to produce professional quality podcast episodes. Number six is to use headphones. This is especially important for interview podcasts, because if your guest or you are listening through speakers, the sound from the speakers is going to come back out and into the mic, giving you this horrible echoey effect, which you can't really edit out. So wear your headphones or earbuds. Even if you're recording locally with a co-host, though, you still might want to wear these so you can monitor what you're recording live. Number seven, use the right software. So there are plenty of free online calling softwares like Teams and Google Meet, but a lot of these free ones, they sound terrible basically. They butcher your audio quality and it's just not suitable for podcast recording. If you do want a cheap, easy to use online calling software, you can use Zoom. With the right settings, it can get you a good result, and it lets you record to separate tracks for each speaker, which is important for the editing process. Better yet, you can use a locally recording online recording software like Riverside, which prevents your network connection from affecting the quality. Number 8 is to record in .wav or .aiff file formats. These file formats are full quality, uncompressed file formats, meaning you're going to get the best quality possible from your recording. During the post-production mastering stage, your podcast will be exported as an MP3 file, so it will be compressed there, but we want to avoid over-compressing. So for the production process, you want to be using those highest quality files possible into the last minute. If you're using something like Riverside, it allows you the option to download in either WAV, WAV or MP3, so you want to be downloading those WAVs. Number 9 is to keep still if you can. I mentioned before about keeping the right position between you and the microphone. You do want to be keeping roughly the same distance between you and the microphone for the recording, and also just shuffling around and things could be picked up by the mic. So try and keep still. Obviously, you're not going to be sitting there like a statue. You want to be comfortable during your recording, but just be mindful of that while you're recording. It's something that does come with practice as well. Number 10 is non-verbal active listening. So when you're in an interview, recording an interview, you want to be nodding and using facial expressions and things for the most part when you're listening to your guest, rather than yeah, okay, and so on throughout. It will help save editing time, and also it will help your guest and your listeners to concentrate on what they're saying. Number 11 is to warm up. So if you haven't been spoken to anyone all day and you're just going straight into an interview first thing in the morning, you might find that your voice isn't quite sounding at its best. And it's the physical and mental side that you want to be warming up. So just having a 5 to 10 minute conversation with your guest before you hit record is always best. I've recorded a lot of singers, and I would always take a few recordings and never use the first recording because it always sounded better after they've had a warm up. And the same rules apply to spoken word. Number 12 is to stay hydrated. You want to be keeping some room temperature water, ideally, or just a drink in general with you when you record your podcast. It's amazing how few podcasters do this, and how many times I've edited podcast episodes where as the episode goes on, the speaker is starting to like cough and splutter and do these sort of half cough, half words, and they just kind of power through it rather than just pausing and going to get a drink and making it easier for everyone involved. So keep a drink with you, or pause the interview and go and get one if you need it. It will make for a better result. Number 13, it's detailed editing. So editing isn't going to take away the meaning of your podcast or censor it in any way or make it feel less authentic. All it's going to do is give your listener a better experience. There are too many podcasts out there for your listener to waste time on sort of waffly ones when they can get the same information, the same value and entertainment in less time. People are busy and they don't need to hear ums and ahs and mistakes and all that. Dead air as well, tangents that don't give any value to the listener. All of these things, they should be cut. Number 14 is to reduce noise as much as possible. Now, some recordings, they're not ideal, especially if your guest doesn't have a great setup and they might have some noise in the background. And it's important to get rid of this. Isotope RX has a great plugin that removes noise really well. Then a lot of digital audio workstations like Audacity and Reaper have great noise reduction plugins built in. Number 15 is balancing levels, and this is the quickest way of making your podcast episodes sound clearer and more easy to listen to. You can do this during the recording, if you're recording locally, by adjusting the mic levels, or during the mixing stage after recording. It's simply a case of adjusting the levels on each track so that they sound balanced and neither sounds particularly louder or quieter than the other. Levels will naturally waver throughout the conversation, but your editing and your compression will take care of that, and we'll be talking about the latter in just a moment. 16 is equalization, or EQ. EQ is a tool that you can use to increase or decrease the level of certain frequencies, so the bass or the high trebles. This is to help you get a more pleasant sounding and balanced result. Any good digital audio workstation like Audacity, Reaper, Adobe Audition, so on, they'll have an EQ built in. Most podcast recordings will benefit from having the sub-bass frequencies removed, the lows increased a little bit, and the low mids decreased a little bit. For a more in-depth look on how to use EQ, I've left a link in the description below. And then 17 is compression, as we mentioned. So this is like another kind of clever volume knob that reduces the level of a track, but only once it goes over a certain threshold, meaning that it reduces the loud sounds, the loud words and the laughs and things, but it doesn't affect the rest, meaning that you get a nice, smooth level throughout. Again, for a more in-depth look on how to use a compressor, then check out the video linked below. Number 18 is a gate or a noise gate. So this works kind of in the opposite way of a compressor, where it reduces the signal, reduces the level of the audio when it goes below a certain threshold. And this is great for easily reducing or removing low-level noises like noise, like quiet shuffles and, outside extraneous noises and things. And you better believe I've got a video in the description that goes into gates in more detail if you want to spend the time learning that. Number 19 is a de-esser, and this is kind of the last mixing plugin that I'm going to go over in this video. It's kind of a cross between a compressor and an EQ, meaning that once the high frequencies go over a certain level, it will reduce the level. So harsh, sibilant S sounds that get picked up in just general speaking, they'll be reduced for a more pleasant experience. And again, I'll go over this in another video linked below. Number 20 is getting the loudness right. So the standard overall average loudness for a podcast episode is -16 LUFS integrated. So mastering your podcast episodes to this loudness will ensure that they sound great next to other episodes on the apps. And you can monitor the average loudness using a loudness meter. If your software doesn't have one built in, you can download a free loudness plugin from ulean.co. And number 21, it's putting together a template. So if you're going to be producing lots of episodes of the same podcast, which is likely, save a template in your audio software. It will save you loads of time going forward. So after you've imported your intro and outro and you've done your mix and everything, you've got your plugins in place, save that as a template so that you can load it up and get a head start on the next episode. 22, first of our workflow tips is to back up your files. I recommend using an online cloud service like Google Drive or Backblaze for this. If you're using Riverside, then it will have a backup on there and then on your computer once you've downloaded your recordings. Consistency is key with podcasting, and episodes take time to record, and you don't want to have to be pushing out something low quality last minute because you've ended up losing some data. Number 23 is to test your equipment regularly. So if you haven't recorded in a little while, test your mic, your cables, everything, your headphones before or the day before you record a podcast episode, especially if you've got guests. You don't want to be turning up on the day and then something doesn't work. Make sure your network connection is running smoothly and everything before your call as well. Number 24 is getting feedback. So listen back to your old episodes, see how you've improved, and share your episodes with other people in your field, especially those that know what good audio sounds like. As you collect reviews as well and ask listeners for their feedback, you might notice that some people are mentioning the audio, whether it's, too quiet, too loud, too echoey, whatever, and then that can be what you focus on next. And lastly, number 25, it's to practice. You're going to be getting plenty of practice if you're recording a podcast every week, but don't worry if your podcast doesn't sound perfect in episode 1. You can still grow your podcast and improve it over time. I hope these tips will help you to improve your podcast and retain new listeners. You might want to have a think about which tip you want to focus on first, one that's going to make the biggest difference. And then let me know in the description, what tip are you going to be focusing on that you think would help your podcast? Or if you have another tip that you can share with everyone, then please drop that in the comments as well. And for more podcasting tips and tutorials, hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.